Hi, I'm Dr. Ginevra. This is day 20 in 30 days of my fibro life. Today I'm talking about Frida Kahlo and why I identify with her so much and why she's such an inspiration to me. So for those of you that aren't that familiar with me, I'm a big Frida Kahlo fan. You might notice that from the two paintings behind me. If you were to walk around my house with me, you'd see a whole bunch more, along with many books and an embarrassing amount of other tchotchkes and things that are kind of in tribute to Frida Kahlo. And why I've identified with her so strongly is that she dealt with chronic pain through most of her adult life. And we think she actually dealt with fibromyalgia as well. So if you're not that familiar with her specific pain history, she was in her late teens. She was riding a bus in Mexico City that was in an accident with a trolley, and she was impaled actually with a metal rod that went through her abdomen, out her pelvis, and it broke her spine in multiple places, broke her pelvis. She almost died multiple times, and it was kind of touch and go for a month. She had multiple surgeries during that time, and then she had this prolonged recovery period where she was immobilized in a plaster cast. And prior to the accident, she'd actually wanted to go to medical school and be a doctor. But as she was, stuck in bed, really not able to move because she's immobilized in this cast, her father actually brought her some paints and canvas, and she taught herself to paint. And I think that the way that she was able to sort of, I don't think she wanted what happened to her. None of us do. We don't want fibromyalgia. We don't want chronic pain. It wasn't the life she thought she was going to have. It wasn't the physical experience she thought she was going to have. But she really was able to transmute that into art, into strength, into expression, into power. And I think that just gives me chills thinking about how she took what was given to her and out of that pain and suffering, created some of the most amazing art that we've seen. She was one of the first artists that really did, like, as she did her self-portraits and as she did kind of expression of her suffering, she put on canvas suffering in emotional suffering, physical suffering that hadn't been expressed in that way before. So I certainly am just impressed with her as an artist. I'm really impressed with her as a human being. And I think why I named my clinic for her, the Frida Center for Fibromyalgia, is because for me, she's such an inspiration, as somebody dealing with chronic pain on a daily basis myself, looking at her and what she was able to make of her life. She lived a big and bold and beautiful and powerful life in spite of, or maybe because of, the pain that she was experiencing. So that's always kind of been my kind of connection to her. But over the past year, as I've dealt with a lot of emotional heartbreak related to my divorce, I've kind of even identified with her even more closely because, you probably know she was married to Diego Rivera, who was at the time a really world famous artist. He really helped her career. He really kind of took her under his wing as an artist. And he also introduced her to, gallery owners and was able to kind of help her become kind of an artist who was able to survive by selling her art, which, still is kind of a hard thing to do. But as a female artist, which was so unusual back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, when there was a very different view on kind of how women should be in the world, he actually really did help her. And they had a very amazing marriage that lasted, through much of her life. But at the same time, he was a womanizer, and he cheated on her, and kind of the last straw for her was when he cheated on her with her sister. And at that point, she actually, Frida, divorced Diego. But during that year when they were kind of separated, her health really declined, and they actually remarried about a year after the divorce, in large part because, as Frida health declined and as her financial situation worsened, she really needed that help. And so, as in their second marriage, it was actually very different. They lived in separate houses. They didn't have sex anymore. That was her rule. And they basically, it was what we would call an open relationship these days. But he kind of the tumultuous nature of their relationship really gave her a lot of heartbreak. And one of her most famous quotes that I love, she said, "There have been two great accidents in my life. One was the trolley, the other was Diego. Diego was by far the worst." So, I would say I've always identified with her as somebody dealing with chronic pain and fibromyalgia, and thinking of her and her heartbreak and how she still managed to survive that and even use that to kind of give her more strength and to give her more things that she could express in her art. That has actually been something that's helped me a lot over this past year, which has been a pretty rough year emotionally. So if you are at all interested in learning more about Frida Kahlo, I highly recommend this book. It's wonderful. You'll also learn a lot about her art. And, she was pretty amazing. I think she's the definition of fibro fierce. So with that, I will say, see you in my next video and stay fierce.